what works today might not work tomorrow. What worked when we first started no longer works now, you know? So just constantly being ahead of the curve and being willing to learn new things, buy other people's time and buy yourself freedom of time, essentially, because that's the most valuable asset any of us will ever have, our time.
Welcome to the Job Dictionary podcast. Today, I have the honor of introducing Andrew Sookiassian, who is a professional sports bettor. First off, Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And three questions that we love to start off with is, in your own words, what do you do? Where do you live? And as a little kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So I'm a professional sports bettor. Been doing it for about 6, 7 years now. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. And as a little kid, I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to be. It was just kind of like up in the air. I always wanted to really be my own boss and not work the traditional 9 to 5 where someone else kind of dictates my schedule. I knew that part of it I knew, but the rest was kind of up in the air for me. And I feel like a lot of people, even kids in college, feel that way. Even when I was in college, I was still a little unsure of what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and tell us about a little bit about your lifestyle as a professional sports bettor, right? Does it allow you to do that?
Yeah, it gives us the flexibility to kind of like make our own schedule, do whatever we want. You can work as much or as little as you want. And obviously the more you work, the more money you're going to make if you know what you're doing. So it kind of really depends on, how far you want to go, essentially.
Gotcha. And how long have you been working as a professional sports bettor?
So I've done a lot of different things, but my business partner and I kind of went down the rabbit hole of gambling and sports betting back in like 2019. So it's been about 5, 6 years now. We started a little earlier than that, but like actually seriously having an LLC and just like running it like a business has been about 6 years.
Tell me a little bit more about the actual story of how you got started. What initially made you get into it, and how did you first get your start?
Well, I've done a lot of different things. I studied finance in college. I went to UNLV. I wanted to be a day trader. My dad was trading stocks at the time. I did that for a little while. It was very difficult. Um, it was something that I enjoyed the fast pace action of trading stocks on a daily basis. But it's a very difficult market to beat because there's a lot of institutional money involved, and I like to compare it to like playing chess with a computer. It's very, very difficult to beat as an individual person. Um, those markets are highly liquid. There's a lot of liquidity in those markets compared to sports betting, which is not really as liquid of a market. I believe it's a lot easier to beat that type of market as opposed to like say the stock market or the currency forex market. So I've done a lot of things. I traded stocks for a little bit after college. After I stopped doing that, I went into insurance. I went into sales. I was selling solar for a little while. All throughout high school and college, I was in restaurants. So I've been all over. Um, I moved away from Vegas for a little while, for a year, to go sell solar. And then when I came back to Vegas, I was still selling solar, and my now business partner had became my roommate. And while I was still in the sales industry, we became intrigued by the sports betting business, given the fact that we live in Las Vegas. We've always been big fans of sports, and have always been intrigued by, how do you beat these markets? How do you actually become profitable at betting sports? So we just kind of went down that rabbit hole, read a few books that kind of like laid down the foundation, the principles for us. And we just kind of took it from there, and we started with very little money, just kind of like to see if we could actually apply some of these principles and actually become profitable consistently. And it just kind of snowballed from there. Things can move very fast when you're on the right track.
Gotcha. And do you think there are any degrees or certifications that could help to get into sports betting that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. There's there's a lot of different ways to approach the industry. There's kind of like the market approach where you're looking at the market as a whole, what prices all the different sports books are offering, and as you see things move, you can kind of pick off good prices. Um, it's kind of like the wisdom of crowds approach, right? Then there's also the approach where you're actually making your own numbers, and that relies heavily on statistics, data analysis, modeling. So definitely, if you're interested in actually like making your own numbers, going down that route, it's very heavily driven by machine learning, data analytics, uh, statistics, modeling, things like that.
Gotcha. And educate me a little bit more about the jobs that you can get within professional sports betting, right? What different types of sports bettor are there, right? If you work for a book, if you work for a certain company, if you are actually betting yourself, could you educate me a little bit more about broadly, like other
Yeah.
positions or titles that you can be as a sports bettor?
So I'm what we do is we bet our own money for our own personal gain. So we just bet sports. But in the industry, there's a lot of different, pockets that people can kind of find themselves in. If you're working for a sports book, you could work in the risk room where you're the guy that's moving the lines when bets are coming in. Um, you People can work on that side in terms of operationally, managing sports books. Uh, on this side, it's mainly just actual bettors, people who bet their own money, people who make their own numbers, people who work with people who make their own numbers. Like I work with a lot of very talented people, guys that specialize in different sports, and we share information, we help each other essentially bet on different sports.
Gotcha. And at your level, Andrew, tell me, what does a day in the life look like for you? What time do you start? What time do you end? Obviously, the line's a little more gray, but how much are you collaborating with other people and are you working mostly remotely?
We're working 100% remotely. Our staff all works remotely. Usually our day starts at 5 a.m. Pacific. My partner and I will usually split the day in half. He'll usually work the first half of the day, so he'll work from like 5 a.m. till about 1 p.m. and then I'll come in and take over from like 1 p.m. till about 9 or 10 p.m. depending on the time of year, depending on the sports schedule. It really relies on, what season it is, during college basketball, college football season, that's usually where a bulk of our work is, from that September all the way through till the end of February is really where a bulk of our work is. And then the summer we'll have some other stuff as well, but it's nowhere near as strenuous of a schedule.
Gotcha. And what sport is more daunting to work or to bet from a time perspective?
Um, College basketball is probably the most brutal schedule because there's so many games every day. Uh, I mean, but it's a very profitable sport, so it's kind of like,
Mm,
we like working college basketball because that's where a bulk of our income comes from during that time of year. College basketball, that's when NBA is also going on. That's when NFL is also going on, and hockey is also going on. So there's a lot just jam packed into that time frame. But the summertime can get a little boring. There's not
yeah,
really
just
a lot.
baseball.
Yeah, just baseball, WNBA, some tennis, some UFC, some soccer. So summer is usually when we take our vacations, when we go travel and, go do different things.
What about in like an Olympic year, like this year, this upcoming summer?
Yeah, we'll have Olympic basketball to bet on and some other events as well. Not so much like some of the niche events because a lot of sports books don't really offer that.
Yeah,
But, the main sports, yeah, we'll be betting on Olympics.
gotcha. And Andrew, tell me, what specific tasks do you spend majority of your day doing as a professional sports bettor?
Well, that evolves over time, right? When we first started, we would spend a lot of our time just in front of a computer, watching numbers, uh, actually betting ourselves and doing the day-to-day stuff like that. Nowadays, it's more so, finding new places to bet, looking for new talented individuals to collaborate with, whether they specialize in a certain sport or, they have access to sports books in certain markets, that are unique that we don't have access to. Most of the time, that's where we're spending our time now. Looking for new employees, new staff to bring onto the team, just to kind of like lighten our load a little bit. That's where most of my time is spent nowadays.
Gotcha. And what technologies or tools does a professional sports bettor use as part of your job?
So that's a good question. There's a lot of different things that people can use. It really depends on your approach. There's two main programs called one is called Dom Best and the other one is called Spank Odds. And they're essentially just kind of like it's a market making software where you're just kind of like looking at the odds of every game across different sports books in the entire market. That kind of allows you to see the picture, and as numbers are moving, you're kind of seeing it in real time. That kind of gives you an idea of where things are at, where the best prices are at. If I want to bet the Lakers, for example, this software allows me to very quickly see, where I could find the best odds on the Lakers without having to log into each sportsbook one by one. There's other software as well. We have some proprietary stuff that we use just to kind of simplify and automate our accounting, just so we know, what we bet,
Yeah.
how much we have on a certain game, just allowing us to manage our risk. That's really it. And there's other things obviously as well, but a lot of the pros like to keep their tech that they have the tech that they're using kind of like close to their chest because that's kind of like their competitive advantage. Some people
Absolutely.
use robots to bet certain sports, in markets where it's obviously allowed. You're not going to use a robot to bet in regulated sports books. But the technology is constantly advancing, so you're just kind of just trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
Sports are constantly advancing. Their numbers are getting sharper, so you have to work to get sharper yourself as well.
that is so true. And Andrew, tell me what parts of your job as a sports bettor do you find most exciting and are most interesting to you?
The actual betting, um, you know, the process of betting, uh, quietly. I think there's an art form to that, because if you're betting a few $100 a game, it's very easy to do. You just find the best price, bet it at that one sports book. If you're trying to bet 5 or 6 figures a game, you have to do it a little bit more strategically so that you can extract the best prices possible before the entire market moves. If I bet at a specific sports book first, the entire rest of the market's going to copy once they move their number. But if I bet at a different sports book first and kind of go in a specific order, I'll be able to get a lot more down at that particular number before the market moves. So I think that aspect is what we enjoy the most.
Gotcha. Do you remember like the first time you kind of felt like the process worked, or at least for your company? Take me back to that time when you were like, okay, like I can do this, we can, as a company, like this works. Like I was saying, maybe not specifically about the actual bet, but just tell me a little bit more about that moment.
Yeah, I mean, it was really like in our first year, we started out very small. We were betting, 100, $200 a game, and we were just winning every month. Um, and we were still very new to the game, but when you're betting such small stakes, it's easy to win. It gets harder the bigger you get, the edges get thinner. If I'm betting $100 a game, I could profit every month out of the year. But if I'm betting, 10, 20, 50 grand a game, then you're gonna have some swings. So it's hard to say, man. It was just such a blur. Everything just moved so fast for us when we started. One minute you're betting $100 a game, and next thing you know, you're betting 5,000 a game, and the next thing you know, you're betting, 20,000 a game, and you just kind of grow to a certain point.
Gotcha. And which parts of being a professional sports bettor are hard or maybe emotionally challenging or just boring in your opinion?
Um, you have to kind of emotionally detach yourself from the actual money. Uh, it can get hard when you see you can make money very fast, but you could lose it just as fast. So, being able to separate your emotions from the ups and downs and just seeing it as just numbers on a ledger, and having good money management skills and not being a degenerate and just like chasing losses. Um, I think that part can be difficult for some people. For me, I was already kind of accustomed to it because I was trading stocks. So I already had a taste of what swings are like. But for many people, it becomes hard. We have a lot of cognitive biases as humans, and we like to chase losses. We like to confirm things that we already believe and kind of push aside the things that go against what we think. So being able to just look at things from a neutral perspective is really important. And then also is just the schedule of it. I mean, if you are a workaholic, you can work 120 hours a week doing this job because there's always something going on. There's always something
Yeah.
happening. So, um, learning to take a step back and take some time away, go get some fresh air, spend time with family, do things for fun is important too. I think it's I think some people have trouble with that because they wanna just keep working, keep doing it. And that's kind of how we were when we first started, first couple years, we were working 80 plus hours a week. Um, but as we grew, we kind of learned to balance it out. Otherwise, you'll get burnt out.
Yeah. And how many hours do you work right now? Typically.
A lot less than that. A lot less. I work about 30 to 40 hours a week, give or take. Um, During the busy season, obviously it'll be a lot more. But now that we have staff and we have help, kind of like we found it most effective to schedule ourselves in shorter bursts. Instead of working 5 days of 8 hour shifts, we find it more effective to work 6 or 7 days of 5 or 6 hour shifts because it's mentally taxing. You have to pay a
Yeah.
lot to pay close attention. There's a lot at stake. And after a certain point, after a certain amount of hours, your focus is just not the same. So we like to do shorter bursts, even, you know, split the day in half, work 3 4 hour block, take a couple hours break, and then come back, work another 3 or 4 hours if that's what is necessary. But typically now we're working 30 to 40 hours.
Gotcha. And would you say generally the sports betting industry works in a similar model where it's on your own time in a remote setting?
If you're working for a company, it can be something different. This is just how we operate as professional bettors. Uh, this is kind of like the schedule that we've set for ourselves that we feel is most effective for what we're trying to accomplish.
Gotcha. And Andrew, I think this next section that we're about to go into is one of the most important ones, and it's basically around misconceptions, right? Like, what misconceptions are there about being a sports bettor? And for example, one of the questions we ask is, what do people underestimate about this profession, right? Like, give me like something that people might underestimate about being a sports bettor.
Well, I think the general public thinks that being a sports bettor involves just watching a lot of sports. And although, there are people that are very successful by watching sports and like finding angles based on game tape, a lot of the people that are successful at betting sports don't really watch a lot of games. They're more so watching numbers on a screen. It's very math heavy, especially the guys that are making computer models for certain leagues, for certain sports. They're taking data, they're cleaning the data, they're plugging it into their models, they're running the simulations, they're coming up with their own numbers. They're making adjustments based on weather and all these other different factors. Um, so a lot of people, kind of glamorize it and think that it's sitting on your couch and kicking your feet up and watching sports all day, and that's not necessarily the case for a vast majority of the professionals. A lot of the time is just spent in front of a computer, keeping up with news, injury updates, staying very, very up to date on, Twitter with a lot of injury news and things like that.
Gotcha. And are there any things that people might like overestimate about being a professional sports bettor? Maybe like overhype positive assumptions about how cool it is to be a bettor.
I think there's a lot of things that people can misconceive about the job. It's not necessarily a get rich quick scheme, you know.
Yeah.
Um, you can make money very fast, but it requires a lot of discipline and it requires a lot of time in front of a computer.
And let's say, I'm sold, right? Andrew, like I want to be a professional sports bettor. I'm coming out of college. What is the fastest way for me to get into it?
I think that there's several books out there that can kind of help lay the foundation. The Logic of Sports Betting by Ed Miller is a good starting point for many people. Um, he just actually recently put out a second book that goes deeper into some of those concepts. There's another book called Sharper by a guy named Poker Joe. Those are the two main books that we first read when we first started out. There isn't really a whole lot of content online that just kind of like really breaks down the basics. And I think those two books do a good job at breaking down the basics. Most of the content online is just kind of like geared towards recreational bettors. People who just want to bet for fun, entertainment. Um, that doesn't mean that there isn't good content out there for professionals. There are some very good podcasts. Um, Circles Off is one of them. Another one is Be Better Bettors. Those are probably the two best podcasts out there um, that kind of dive into the different topics revolving around the pro sports betting community. I've been guests on both of those. My business partner has also been a guest on both of those. Um, but the two books that I mentioned are really like a good starting point. If someone wants to become a professional bettor, those two books will allow you to just kind of like lay down the basic principles. But the thing is a lot of people that are professionals, they don't really care so much to teach other people uh about how to win. I know it's not really a top priority of mine. I'm happy to come on this
Yeah.
podcast and talk with you and just kind of go over some general stuff. But the anything that's detailed, in depth, most people don't really want to share that information because
Yeah.
it is a market that isn't very big. There's it's a pretty small community. Most of the pros know each other, I would say, and a lot of them are fighting for the same lines, for the same games every morning. So it's kind of like you're going against your peers trying to bet on the same game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So a lot of the guys that are pros, they don't really care to teach other people how to bet professionally. Now, there are instances where, you'll meet someone, they like you, they want to take you under their wing, kind of mentor you. That does occur, but you're not going to find like very, very great information online for the masses, if that makes sense. But the basics to just kind of get someone started, that info is out there for sure. Those two books are a great starting point.
Gotcha. And so if it kind of seems like if I am somebody who's really actually super serious about being a professional sports bettor, it comes down to more networking and reaching out to people, other sports bettors, or maybe companies that do a lot of betting and seeing if you can get your foot on the door.
Yes. Yeah, we spend a lot of time networking. And a lot of our network has come from our podcast appearances and people knowing who we are. We'll speak a little bit about what we do. But what we do personally is not really like rocket science. There's a lot of very, very talented people in the space, and we collaborate with some of them, and we look to bring value to each other by working together.
Gotcha. And Andrew, you mentioned you had some experience trading, also selling. What other fields are people coming from before they get into professional sports betting? Is it random or do you see themes?
I think I think depending on the approach that you take, it can vary. The people who model obviously come from a statistics background, um, computer programming background, machine learning, AI, that type of stuff. Those are the guys that are, forecasting their own numbers for specific leagues. Um, Guys like me come from, finance background, but really it's something that anyone can learn. It's just a matter of desire. But the stronger you are in math skills, the easier it will be for you to pick it up, because there is a lot of like quick math that you have to do in your head while you're betting um, across various leagues. Like, what's the value of half a point in a football spread? What's the value of a half a point on an NBA total? Depending on the point range, that can vary. So these types of things like memorization, believe it or not, we found that people with gaming backgrounds tend to be pretty good at what we do, because, there are people that have really quick reflexes, whether it be on a computer or like, joystick video game
Hmm.
controller. Those people are able to react pretty quickly. And this is a market that moves pretty fast. So, if you're able to react pretty quickly to information, to news coming out, uh, you can beat your peers in getting to a number.
Gotcha. And going off of that point, Andrew, I think one of the most important questions that we actually ask is what does somebody have to be good at and like doing in order to be good at this job? Right? Like what has to come easily to you? You've been mentioning right now a few. Is there any more that you think are very important? Just like bottom line, foundational level skills.
Math for sure, money management, adaptability, mm, knowing sports teams and leagues and players is also very important. Having a good general knowledge of sports is very helpful. Like, if for example the line on the Lakers right now is +7, what would the line be if LeBron was announced out right now? You got to
Plus
know what
14, probably.
Yeah, you got to know what each player is worth, give or take. Uh, that can help you make your decisions a lot quicker than, being reactionary. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And how long does it take for somebody to become a really good professional sports bettor, in your opinion?
I mean, it depends. Some of it is hard to teach. Some of it can be taught, but some of it is very hard to teach. A lot of it just comes from experience and just seeing movement patterns over and over again, being able to anticipate stuff that's going to happen. Uh, I think experience is the biggest thing. Just seeing, being, having enough hours on the job, just like anything else. The more practice you get, the better you become at something. 10,000, 20,000 hours, whatever the case may be. But things are constantly changing. What works today might not work tomorrow. What worked when we first started no longer works now. So just constantly being ahead of the curve and being willing to learn new things.
Yeah. And from your
Yeah,
experience, Andrew, tell me what is the average salary for a professional sports bettor? And you can provide a range, even if it's a little broad, based on experience, probably.
very broad. Can be very broad because it heavily relies on the how many sports books you have access to. If I'm a guy that's just living in Vegas and I only have, the Vegas sports books at my disposal, I can make, up to 100K, depending on my bankroll too, that there's that as well. If I have access to the entire global market, you can make 8 figures, 9 figures. It's possible. Not easy. It takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort, but making 7 to 8 figures is definitely doable in sports. But that requires a big network and a big operation of actually being able to
Yep,
bet in a lot of different places at once.
absolutely. And when people in your field move on from professional sports betting, is there any industries that they go into after, or do most people kind of stay within professional sports betting?
That's a good question. I mean, I know a lot of people that have that some of the guys that mentored me that have been around a little bit longer than we have. They are pretty involved in real estate. I think it's kind of like the safe play for people once they amass a certain amount of wealth. But a lot of the people that I know that have been successful in sports are still in sports. There isn't a lot of things out there that have the upside potential of sports, uh, and the amount of money that you can make given the amount of capital you have at your disposal to work with. So, you know, for us, we like to invest in different things, but we like to invest in things that make sense to us and come and is like what we know. You know, we like to relate things to sports betting because that's how we understand most markets. So, real estate, crypto, things like that, luxury assets, you know, getting in and out of luxury assets, buying and selling stuff. We don't do too much of that. We stick with mostly sports and real estate because that's what we know best.
Gotcha. And Andrew, you mentioned earlier in the interview some books that you would recommend if somebody had like an interest in sports betting to kind of build this foundational knowledge, the
Hmm.
basics, like you said. Are there any books or programs that you would not recommend?
No, I haven't read anything that was like, oh, this sucks. Nobody should read it. And just avoid that kind of stuff for the most part.
Yeah. And Andrew, what would you tell yourself when you're at the beginning of your career? And you can do at the beginning of your professional sports betting career or at the beginning of your career, like first job out of college.
Buy as much Bitcoin as possible.
That would have been smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe like in the realm of professional sports betting, anything specific?
Um, I mean, I think we did a pretty good job from start to finish. I'm happy with the way that things have turned out. I don't hire help sooner to have a little more free time. We worked really hard in the first few years. Uh, and we were doing a lot of the work ourselves. There's certain things that we could have delegated for sure to make our lives easier. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I would have told myself. The best investment you can make is buying other people's time, in our opinion. The more people, and you're also doing something good. Uh, you're providing jobs for other people, you know? If you become profitable and you're able to make uh an income that can cover your cost of living instead of like buying things for yourself that don't really matter and aren't going to hold their value, buy other people's time and buy yourself freedom of time, essentially, because that's the most valuable asset any of us will ever have, our time.
Gotcha. And Andrew, what's ahead for you, right? Like what's your vision for Pro Bet? Pro Bet Vegas. Like what do you see or what do you want to get out of it?
Obviously, grow it even more as much as we possibly can. There kind of is a limit to how much you could make in the sports betting industry. Um, just because like, if I wanted to bet, for example, I could bet if I had all the resources I could possibly think of, everything out there, I could bet, say for example, $1 million a game. but I can't bet $1 billion on a game. There's just not enough liquidity to do that.
Yeah.
So just grow it to as much as we possibly can get it to grow to, and then, diversify into other industries, explore other things that are interesting to us. I think having a curious mind and wanting to learn new things is important because you never know what else might pique your interest. When I was a kid, I never imagined I would be a professional sports bettor. Even when I was in college studying finance, I never imagined that I would be a professional sports bettor, but here we are, and that's all thanks to just being curious and wanting to see what it's all about, things that interest us, dive into it, try to learn more about it. And if it's something that really, really intrigues you, it's not going to feel like work. So that's probably what I would say.
And for you, does it feel like work? Do you love your job?
I love it. It's amazing. We have fun. Even working remotely, like it can get lonely sometimes, sure, because you're in front of a computer and maybe you're just on a call with one other person, or maybe you're just doing it alone, but the work of it is actually fun. We enjoy it. Getting down a good bet and doing good work feels good. So we enjoy it.
Gotcha. Any last maybe heads up or disclaimer or advice you would give to somebody who is interested in professional sports betting?
Don't bet money that you aren't willing to lose, because you can lose. It's definitely possible to lose, especially if you don't know what you're doing and you're not managing your money properly. Um, I recommend anybody that wants to get into this field to establish a bankroll and bet very, very small and just prove that you can actually win consistently over a large sample size. Once you can prove that you can win, then you can slowly start scaling up. The biggest mistake a lot of people make is they just move too fast, and they bet too big relative to how much they have. If you're sweating any one game, you're betting too big. No one game should have an impact on you. So that's
Gotcha.
my best advice.
Thank you, Andrew. And where can people reach out to you or follow along with your work or your company?
On Twitter or X, whatever people want to call it these days, I'm at Armenian Bettor, Armenian Bettor. Um, that's probably where they'll be able to find me the easiest. And some of the podcast appearances that I've been on, I've pinned that on my Twitter profile. So that's where they can connect with me. If they have any
Gotcha.
questions, well, people are welcome to DM me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us on
Of
the Job
course.
Dictionary podcast. We really appreciate it. And I can definitely see this job getting a lot of traction.
Thank you. That I've been on, I've pinned that on my Twitter profile. So that's where they can connect with me. If they have any
Gotcha.
questions, well, people are welcome to DM me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us on the
Of
Job
course.
Dictionary podcast. We really appreciate it. And I can definitely see this job getting a lot of traction.
Thank you.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we could better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!